You might think that the Pokemon market's stronger than ever, but I want to speak about why there may be a different story at play. Though before getting into this video, I'm actually gifting this Skarmory illustration rare. Now, if I do reply to your comment with this incredible alchemy emoji, then congrats, you've won this card. And hey, if you are a first timer here, welcome to the channel. My name's Phil, and I've been making content here for about 2 years now. Feel free to subscribe to be kept in the loop. Though, here's the thing, okay? When it comes to this whole term and, the market crashing, that whole concept just gets like a heap of reactions, right? And I mean, I get it because, the word crash implies that there's some level of like doom or there's some level of a huge problem, right? But right now, if Pokemon cards actually fell down in price, I actually don't think even a crash is the right term. I mean, honestly, at this point, any kind of price correction or prices coming down would just make the hobby go back to its natural state. And like right now, it's kind of falling apart, okay? Because the whole of 2025 has been somewhat of a disaster for the Pokemon hobby. Literally, there has not been one product release in the whole year of 2025 that's been attainable at any normal pricing. This whole thing has lasted probably a bit longer than expected, and honestly, it's at the point where it's just kind of exhausting, okay? Because we're like now approaching the final set of 2025 with Phantasmal Flames, and the situation's shown no improvement. In fact, it's probably even gotten worse. Though with all that said, there is a few areas we need to discuss in this video, and it's kind of why I think a Pokemon crash or a market correction or whatever you want to call it is kind of inevitable as we approach next year. Now, the big reason for this is because the hobby has become a bit of an echo chamber, like not in the terms of people like just repeating the same kind of things. It's more of an echo chamber in terms of people who are buying. The money right now is being traded between one another, right? A big thing that people say is like, Poncho Pikachus, that no real collector is buying those. It's literally just vendors trading that with other vendors. That's kind of like how collectibles feel right now, just on a bit of a wider scale. It's kind of like really big people that believe in collectibles are trading and kind of holding the price between one another. And right now there's this kind of like spell that's been placed on the hobby, and the big reason is because in 2025 prices have just gone up, okay? There's been like very small amounts of dips, okay? And when it gets like this, there is going to come a point, and not to sound like a negative person or, I don't want to kind of rain on people's parades who are investing in collectibles, but there just will come a natural point where it just can't keep climbing forever, okay? You got to remember, Pokemon cards don't exactly have much utility outside of their kind of collectibles. What I mean by this is people who invest in real estate. Well, real estate actually has utility. You can live in the home. You can, rent that home out to others. And if real estate could still crash like it did in 2008, then trust me, Pokemon cards can definitely crash, especially when people realize that there's not much utility. Don't forget, when you're looking at other eras of like baseball cards, or, there was that whole junk wax era in the 90s, and that was like a big kind of thing of an overprinting issue of sports cards. A lot of people say that Pokemon's in a junk wax era right now. I don't agree with that entirely, but there is levels of that at play in terms of how much kind of product is coming out. I mean, there will come a natural point where, people kind of need to just relook at this and see what's happening, because at the moment it is getting a little bit like, challenging for the average Joe, okay? And when I kind of started making content on this channel, it was a little bit easier to kind of predict things in a way, because the hobby was, at a very much like a normal basis, okay? And what I mean by that is like you could walk into a store, you could buy Stellar Crown on the shelves, Obsidian Flames, there was no issue, Paldea Evolved, Scarlet and Violet base, there was no problems. Even Crown Zenith, even Pokemon 151, you could just walk into a store, it was easy. No one even kind of expected that these things were going to be hard to get, so soon. But right now, if you want to buy Phantasmal Flames in store, good luck, dude. I mean, if you do see them in store, you're just going to get a massive sticker shock when you look at it, because it's going to be like either, 50% up of retail price, or maybe even double retail price, because, these big stores know that they can get away with it, okay? So right now, there is going to be a point where it does reverse, especially as, Pokemon has had a whole year to play catch up. I mean, you got to remember, right? Most collectors right now are refusing to sell their collections for below what they paid. And there's almost like an ingrained expectation for profit if if you buy Pokemon cards, right? And the thing is, this mindset has just been collectively adapted by both buyers and sellers right now because, you know, Pokemon cards isn't really about collecting anymore. And I mean, a big thing that, like a big discussion point right now is sealed product, because sealed product has historically always been in the green zone of collecting. Like, unless there's been a massive reprint, sealed doesn't come down in price. Though there has been some examples of pretty big price drops, you know, even without any reprints. I mean, look at this right now. All right, you know, the whole sealed product, you know, it's getting wild, right? Now, the Mega Evolution Enhanced booster box right here, which is, you know, the sealed kind of box topper version. Now, in the last 3 months, the kind of price here was 265 US. Then it went all the way up to 344, and you can see right here, it's selling for 271. Now, to drop from, you know, 345 US to 271 is a pretty significant percentage decrease. Now, this is the thing, and this is the annoying thing right now in the hobby, and it's just doing my head in, dude. It's the price of sealed product when it's brand new. And I get prices rising over time. I don't think that really brings up that many questions when, you know, Fusion Strike starts climbing, you know, years later, because people reminisce on the set. You know, a lot of people enter the hobby, they look back at previous sets, and then they just want to, you know, buy that thing that's like real old school, right? Everyone gets that. In terms of this is just annoying, dude. This is just so stupid. Like, when you see, you know, even 271 right now, that's bananas, dude. You gotta understand that this time will pass eventually. It's just not sustainable to have products selling out every single time they come out. And, you know, a lot of people say we need like a Shrouded Fable to come out to calm the hobby down. We need like a dud set. But honestly, Journey Together was probably the closest dud set that we were going to get. And that still didn't really calm the market down that much. So, you know, we're going to have to really kind of see how it's going to play out in 2026. I do think prices will come down. I'm not saying that because, you know, oh, wow, you're trying to get a headline now, Phil, or you're trying to make like some massive kind of news in the market. No, I just genuinely think that, you know, 1 year of this is pretty much already been way too long, okay? So if it's going to extend into 2026 where you're paying $270 for a brand new booster box, it's just ridiculous, right? And I don't think that it's even that sustainable. I mean, when I wanted to buy Twilight Masquerade, you know, I would get it easily, 120 USD, 130 USD a booster box, no questions asked. I could buy it from multiple different places. Right now, you'd be lucky to get anywhere near those price points. I mean, a lot of people remember buying, you know, Paradox Rift, buying Scarlet and Violet base for like 90 US. Those prices are just nowhere to be seen. And in saying that, even though Mega Evolutions, I don't know, I kind of have been slightly disappointed initially with the set. My opinion will probably change as time goes on. I think for like, you know, and there's all this big thing. A lot of people are saying, hey, it's not a base set. I don't know where that kind of thing's coming from. One guy commented saying, hey, dude, I cringe when people call it a base set. Well, it kind of is a new era. So whether or not it's a base set, maybe it doesn't have the term of like Sword and Shield base or Scarlet and Violet base, but, you know, for me, a base set, and what I think a lot of the community are saying when it's a base set, is a skip to a new era. It's a refresh point. I think the whole confusion's been because special illustration rares and illustration rares are still in Mega Evolutions. So because of that, it kind of feels like a continuation of Scarlet and Violet, but it definitely is a base set, okay? It's definitely a new era that complements the Legends EA rollout, and, you know, Pokemon's in a weird position right now because Generation 10's about to come out, and they've got this kind of era that they're kind of going to be squeezing out until Generation 10 comes out, which a lot of people are assuming is next year. Now, moving on to Destined Rivals. Now, great set, okay? Great cards, great special illustration rares, awesome. But in terms of the pricing, let's just look at this in the last 3 months. Selling for 304 US, hit a market high of $455. This set came out in May of 2025, not even a year old. And you can see it's had a pretty sharp decline to 379 from 455, which is pretty big. But in terms of these price drops and how it's kind of going out, that's pretty rare for sealed product, right? Especially that there's been no massive news of a huge reprint or a restock or anything like that. To see prices come down that much is a fair bit, okay? But in saying that, you're still paying $380 for a brand new booster box. That is very hard to swallow. That, for me, it's very unlikely I'm going to be buying that. I don't know a lot of people that are going to be paying that kind of prices for a brand new set. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do that. You really need to have the balls to, buy something like that. Do you want to be paying those prices? You really need to ask yourself that, because this hobby can only continue. The thing is right now, you just got too many people coming in with they're just so haphazard with spending. They're just like, oh, it's a set, I want this set. There's almost I feel like people don't have a brake pedal right now. I don't care if in a year that triples in price. To me, that doesn't bother me. It's still paying $380 for a brand new set is pretty inexcusable at this point. And, I think the TCG is doing a lot of things right in terms of the arts, in terms of the designs. I think they're really nailing all those aspects. In terms of product availability, they're really kind of, making a few poor decisions. I've always said this, and I'm still very big on this, that Pokemon really needs to slow down on, releasing so many new products and, releasing all these new sets, because no one can catch up on the older sets, okay? I actually don't think if they were still printing Destined Rivals and we didn't get Black Bolt White Flare and we didn't get a new Mega Evolution era, I still think that would have been okay. I think there is still enough demand, but obviously they're just feeding this new hype machine. And, the way that it's kind of going and the way the hobby is being going lately and recently, and, just the way it's kind of performing lately is so harsh. I mean, the climate for collecting has just become very, very difficult. And, I just kind of miss the days of being able to buy a booster box and open it. I haven't really been able to have that experience in 2025. If you look at my channel throughout 2024, I was opening every single set when it released. Now it is so hard to do that because I know that people, there's this whole thing, oh, but Phil, you're a collector, and you're an investor, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, man. If you're going to be buying a booster box for $400, US, mind you. At that point, it becomes a pretty big financial decision to, open one of these. It's literally just saying, hey, I'm going to open my Nintendo Switch 2, but there's a chance that my Nintendo Switch 2 won't be working. But still, I'm just going to open it for the sake of it, right? And it's getting bizarre with the kind of prices that, are happening right now in the hobby. Now, moving on to Surging Sparks, you can see it's selling for $303, dropped down to $234, which is a pretty significant decline. So, Surging Sparks just has so many things going for it in a positive direction. I also think it's kind of been a victim of having such awesome sets after it. And now it just seems like it isn't that good compared to, Prismatic Evolutions, Destined Rivals. And I'm not sure where people think if Journey Together or Surging Sparks is better. Personally, I think Surging Sparks is, but of course, the hobby is going through a bit of a transitional period. Now, one that has kind of paused is Paldea Evolved. Now, there's something about Australians. Everyone always says like any Australian content creators, everyone just criticizes how we say Paldea. I mean, that in Australia is how you would say it, right? I don't know, is it Paldea? If you're from US or Canada or wherever you're from, how do you say it? Maybe spell that out or say it phonetically in the comments so I can see kind of how you guys are saying that, right? But check this out. Paldea Evolved selling for, $476 US. Right now selling for $437. If I pull that in the month graph, there has been some pretty significant drops coming here. Now, this is interesting, right? Because you do have the Magikarp illustration rare. The Magikarp is the front runner for this entire kind of set, okay? I think a lot of people right now are over leveraged, and I think that people have just gone too hard. One thing that can happen, if people realize how much they've spent and they see the market really pull back in 2026, there might be a lot of people that get freaked out about that, okay? And that's just something that we need to kind of just monitor because, buying at, even at 434, buying just because you're looking at old school Fusion Strike or, Evolving Skies booster boxes and you can see they continuously climb, will history always repeat itself? It might, but, not to sound like that, dude, but the economy is pretty bad. I just saw that Australia's inflation just went up. Now, I'm not sure, but the fact that we're still battling inflation, the fact that we're still battling all these kind of issues right now in the world, it doesn't exactly seem like Pokemon is exactly the secret answer to, solving all of these problems. So you got to remember when you're buying things that are this expensive, if it does pull back, it can sting quite a fair bit. Just monitor your spending when if you're buying stuff at 434. Sure, it could go up, right? And I think that's the problem with this thing because it continuously goes up. When someone tries to give advice of hey, just take a step back and don't spend that much, everyone kind of looks at you and says, oh, I see, you're a banana, dude. You're telling people not to spend that much money, but can't you see that it just climbed up in price? Well, if you've got the money, go for it. If you don't, well then, be careful on how much you spend on these products. There is a funny story in 2024, okay? I was in the position to buy 2 Fusion Strike cases at retail price, okay? So it was very, in terms of now, it was a great buy. Now, I was very confident that Fusion Strike would increase in price. But at that time, I didn't have the funds without actually, going into savings and, really reconfiguring things. I didn't have, the liquid cash available to buy 2 cases. So what did I do? I bought 2 booster boxes. Now, I know well that Fusion Strike was a great purchase back then. I really thought it was. And of course, Fusion Strike, look how much it's climbed up in price. But then if you ask me right now, hey Phil, do you regret not buying 2 cases? No, not at all. Why would I regret something when I know it would have put me in a stupid position at the time? And I think people don't understand that. People go, oh, but you can buy it at $434 right now, but maybe in 2 years, it's gonna be $1,000. You would have made a great decision. Not if you're putting yourself in a stupid position to buy it, then it's always the wrong decision. And I think, a real good book to actually learn about this is The Psychology of Money. Dude, I really recommend this because it kind of goes into the psychology of how people think when they invest and how they always say, oh, future profits, and they kind of think about this. It's much better and healthier to get in the mindset of buying things when it won't put you in any bad positions. That is the real key to not even investing in collectibles and just purchasing anything in life. That is what you want to be doing. You don't want to be just buying things because, you think or you can see the data or you can see with full confidence how much they're going to climb. There's a lot of cards and products right now that I'm super certain are gonna rise, okay? I have such confidence in them. But at the same time, I'm not spending $2,000 on that PSA 10 slab or, $1,000 in a booster box because I've got full confidence it's gonna rise, because I know that would put me in a bad position. So I always put the first thing I think of, do I have the funds available right now? And the second question I have is, if I don't have the funds and I had to pull from somewhere else, will it put me or my family in a shit position? If the answer is yes, I never buy it. And I think that's just some words of wisdom that I could give everyone right now if you are buying, products at that price. Another interesting one is Twilight Masquerade, selling for $329 US, right now selling for $309. $20 drop for, not exactly 2 years old, about a year and a half old, but still getting 10% off your price point right now, considering the market's so hot, is pretty interesting. And of course, Twilight Masquerade, great set. A lot of people love it, but I still think the hobby is in a very, very challenging position in its own way. And I think more people are entering, but of course, more questions are being asked by a lot of collectors, whether or not they're comfortable paying these prices. I think a big shift will happen eventually when people realize, hey, maybe some of these prices that I've been paying are a little bit too expensive. So that's why, and a big lesson from this video, if you are buying these products, just make sure that you're in the position to do so, because they are very, very expensive. Now, while this is happening, it could also mean that Pokemon cards do reverse from these massive highs, though it's anyone's guess on how that will play out. Though I think a question that comes up is, how do you actually collect Pokemon cards on a budget? And I'll reveal that answer in this video on screen right here. Within this video, I go over collecting Pokemon on a budget. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's currently appearing right there. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.